Season 1 of The Boys made quite the splash, bringing Garth Ennis and Darick Robertson's comic to life on the small screen in suitably visceral style. The series isn't following the books closely, but so far, it's managed to capture the irreverence and overall tone of the source material quite well overall, satisfying longtime readers while drawing in a whole new group of fans along the way. Video games are almost always about the everlasting conflict between good and evil. And sometimes, they also cover the everlasting conflict between two characters who are constantly butting heads. Season 2 is now upon us, and it looks to try and outshine The Boys' first offering by upping the sheer insanity of events in a world populated by less-than-admirable superheroes as the rich story continues to unfold. With 8 new episodes and a slew of fresh scenes to comb through, this season promises to be a packed ride with references and nods that are easy to miss or just might not stand out after a single viewing. Carefully threaded in are links back to comics storylines, potential foreshadowing, and a love of pop culture that helps lighten the mood in spots, with details big and small that will keep viewers glued to the show. If you're the hero of the story, usually you spend most of the game chasing or reacting to the bad guy. Here's a look at all the small details you missed in The Boys Season 2. The Cone of Silence. This is a show that enjoys its television references. Whether it's a nod to other projects that the cast and crew have worked on in the past or an easy-to-miss detail like having Chris Hansen of To Catch a Predator fame anchor a news broadcast, there are plenty of little things to look and listen out for. In the opening scene of The Boys Season 2's first episode, the audience jumps back and forth between two events happening simultaneously as Black Noir cleans up a mess from the end of the previous season while Mr. and conversely, if you're the bad guy, you usually have some kind of overarching goal or evil plan. Edgar, played by Giancarlo Esposito, negotiates the conditions of Vought's superheroes operating in the military. But even if a bad guy is rivaling their protagonist nemesis, it doesn't mean their evil plans are effective, or even good in the first place. As the two men discuss collateral damage, Edgar gives his official response but then offers up a more realistic answer after using the phrase, "cone of silence," to indicate its secrecy. This is a reference to Get Smart, a comedic 1960s spy show starring Don Adams as Agent 86. Here's a list of some of the worst evil plans in video games. In it, a running gag continually resurfaced around Maxwell Smart's desire to speak to the chief privately, urging for the highest level of secrecy by using the Cone of Silence, a device consisting mostly of clear plastic that would lower from the ceiling and cover the heads of both men so they could communicate without fear of being heard. The device, however, rarely worked as intended. Boys in the Belly of the Whale. The build to Season 2 of The Boys has been strong, with Amazon showing off several clips of the upcoming hijinks and going as far as to release the first 3 minutes of the premiere episode. One of those clips depicts quite the confrontation on the high seas, which turns into a sticky situation on the beach involving the deep and a whale. One detail that's easy to miss in The Boys Season 2 comes after the whale's evisceration. Inside the messy mammal, Huey has had enough and thinks the best course of action is to give up inside the beast, refusing Butcher's help. The bossy Butcher decides to leave him, knowing that they aren't safe there, and refers to his angry teammate as Pinocchio while he's walking off. Many fans who are watching a series like The Boys may not have seen Disney's 1940 classic animated film Pinocchio in a while, but one of the later scenes involves a handful of the characters ending up trapped in the stomach of a giant whale named Monstro. In an effort to save his friends and father figure, Pinocchio devises a plan to make the sea creatures sneeze so they can escape. Thankfully, all Huey has to do to leave is crawl out of a giant speedboat-sized hole. The heart of Black Noir. Anyone who's read the source material for The Boys doesn't need to be told how terrible of a person Black Noir is. It is difficult to explain how heinous he can be without spoiling some major plot points in the comics, but let's just say that the show has changed his character a good bit and probably won't even scratch the surface of his true vile nature. The new season shows that he isn't afraid to murder women, but will we see his other atrocities on display during the series? In the first episode he's dispatched to kill Nakib, and after doing so he walks into the room of a small child while still holding the severed head. This moment concerned some fans who were in the know, as Black Noir's comics counterpart has been known to cannibalize children on occasion, but here we see him pick up a stuffed bunny and play with it for a moment, perhaps in an attempt to comfort the kid. At least we hope so. There could have been more that the camera didn't show at that time. This version of the character made for the small screen seems to be different, though, even touching his chest, as if moved by the sight of Lucy the dead whale. It's a quick moment, easy to overlook, and it probably shouldn't be taken as a sign that Black Noir deserves to be seen as anything but an antagonist and killer, but it may indicate a softer side to this incarnation, or at least the showrunners trying to give him more personality. Embrace the music after Butcher's rousing speech about the Spice Girls during Season 1, and am bringing it back up in Season 2. We knew the boys loved their selected tracks and musical mentions. Like many other things in the show, they've doubled down on incorporating more of these elements into the program, even as small parts of the plot. Huey is seen watching and later discusses in detail the Billy Joel music video for his 1985 hit, You're Only Human, Second Wind, while the earlier single, Pressure, from the same artist was also used in the first episode. A more comical moment comes after the Deep discusses his experience of doing shrooms at a Goo Goo Dolls concert and later viewers hear him lazily singing along to Iris. It's right before a very memorable cameo by Patton Oswalt that works so well with the 90s hit as an introduction. In something a little more fun that can easily go unnoticed, due to it coming in the middle of an intense scene, Homelander is urging Starlight to kill one of our heroes, or else he'll kill both of them, and instructs her how to do it. With a laugh and funny facial expression, he tells Annie January that it'll be easy and to put her hands in the air like you just don't care, a variation on the lyric from Cameo's hit, Word Up, and an excellent example of the show's dark humor in action. We do get something actually humorous when Huey and Starlight break out into yelling another Billy Joel classic, We Didn't Start the Fire, in what's almost a rare feel-good moment for the show, while one of the Deep's prospective brides laments an unfortunate Ed Sheeran tattoo. Dawn of the Seven. Every good superhero franchise needs movies, and when you're in a world of real-life heroes, making sure those movies are actually good is probably even more important. In an Episode 3 scene, we see someone pitching the script and storyboards for an upcoming film to the group, getting wrapped up in his own hype when going over the final scene and the big reveal of the ending, where he proudly proclaims the words, Dawn of the Seven. This is all before following up with how to handle the dead team member that Lin-Manuel Miranda wants to voice. The phrase in and of itself might not be enough to say that The Boys Season 2 is nodding to the subtitle for Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, but that isn't the only clue here. At one point the film promoter sings the name of Hans Zimmer, who was one of the composers on that particular film, when discussing the appropriate music for the scene, and then there's also the color scheme of the poster mocking up the film's logo. This is an even deeper cut than it looks like. The original comics for The Boys started out being published by Wildstorm, a subsidiary of DC Comics, before moving over to Dynamite Entertainment. And don't worry that it's all about DC here. The Boys Season 2 is also off to a good start with its potshots at Marvel. For example, Homelander making fun of the idea of having a visually impaired hero named Blindspot, who is pretty obviously inspired by Daredevil. Butcher vs. Huey Season 2 begins with the boys in a rough spot. Not only are they hiding out underneath a pawn shop owned by the Haitian Kings as wanted criminals, but there is no Butcher, and that means no leadership. In his absence, Huey tries to get his teammates to do things a bit differently and entertain other ideas, but this doesn't seem to fly, especially when Butcher returns with new motivations. It isn't long before their personalities clash and punches start flying between the two. Huey has always been a bit of the moral center for the group, and a member of the team even points this out in Episode 3, saying, "He's your canary, you let your canary die, how you gon' know when you gone too far." This is all fine and well, two headstrong people working through their issues, but for those familiar with the comics, this initial physical confrontation is also an unpleasant foreshadowing.
Without going into major spoilers, the show is based on Butcher and Huey experiencing a much greater disagreement on what needs to be done at the end of a long and depressing road with a lot of lives held in the balance. The two wind up doing a little more than just punching each other at that point. If the show follows suit, this will be a moment to look back on and see where it started. Homelander in the mirror. No one will ever accuse Homelander of being a pillar of sanity, or even remotely stable if we're being honest, but that doesn't mean he can't unravel more. This season has been particularly stressful for the Seven's leader as he tries to deal with issues surrounding a new team member that is stealing his thunder and the troubles of being a superhero dad, so it shouldn't be surprising that he might snap. This is even more likely to happen when Homelander must face himself. In a previous scene, it was established that the completely normal Homelander had the character of doppelganger, seen in the previous season, portraying the woman he killed, Madeline Stillwell, for some cozy cuddling. This Mystique knockoff takes the initiative when Homelander says, "I don't need anyone but myself," transforming into a copy of him, while still wearing the sexy lingerie, and leading into a rather awkward conversation that doesn't end well. This situation somewhat resembles a scene in issue 49 of the comic, in which Homelander stands in front of a mirror and talks to himself. Here, someone speaks back, but there is a bit of a twist on that element. In both cases, it looks as if we get to see the character breaking down a little bit after being confronted by himself, but compared to the comic scene, the ending of this episode may show the cracks in Homelander's psyche a bit more clearly.